guys. It sounds like you've got moves. Let's see what moves you got to this. I like the head. Some people like to bobble. Awesome. Welcome, everybody. Hello, everybody. It is Gina with Venissimo Cheese and Noon on Tuesday. Welcome today. We are going to talk beer and cheese. We're heading into Beer Week again here in San Diego, and beer is everywhere. And so today, I've got two beer experts. We've got Ian. Hello, Ian.
Hello.
He is excellent mega monger at our shop in North Park, which happens to be inside Bottlecraft, which is a beer shop. And we bring with us today Zach from Pariah Brewing.
Thank
Hello.
you.
How are you, Zach?
Good, I'm good.
Good. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for
guys.
having me.
Thanks
I
for
appreciate
coming in,
it.
guys. The number one question, and I see this every time that I've meet beer guys, this is very serious. Is it a requirement to have a beard when you work in the beer business?
Well, I obviously don't have that great of one, and I never have, and I don't think that's a requirement.
You don't think so? Okay, because every single person
I think it's more a
I swear.
requirement for the brewers themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
Front of the
is-
house, people need to look a little more.
Okay, a little more.
A little more.
Adds a little
Not-
special flavor into the beer.
It
Yeah.
does it. Just that
Totally.
hint of, and a little extra protein.
That's
and-
actually the final touch of brewing. They dip their beard
in
into
there.
the thing. Yeah.
Yummy.
Yeah.
Let's all try that. Awesome. Well, Zach, I guess let's start with you. Tell us a little about yourself.
Cool. I'm Zach Deerdorf. I actually am born and raised in San Diego. I got into the beer industry about 2 years ago through the Cicerone program. So I'm a certified Cicerone, and then through that, I formerly worked at Tiger Tavern for a little bit.
Okay.
And then I heard about Pariah opening up before they even opened up, and so I applied.
Yeah.
And I'm ale curator for Pariah Brewing Company. I do the draft tech there as well. So.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Tell us, the Cicerone is kind of like being a sommelier in the wine business. Is that right?
Exactly. It's the
Mhm.
same program that they test on beer knowledge,
Mhm.
experience, history, service. So it's the equivalent of the
Yeah.
sommelier program for
Okay.
the wine industry. Yeah.
Of the wine industry. That is very cool.
Yeah.
So you can know all the nuances. It's interesting that there's just such specialties, right? out
Yeah.
there?
It's a pretty crazy test. There's blind tastings and stuff, and the syllabus is about 20 pages long worth of stuff. But yeah, it's a great
Yeah.
program. I highly recommend it for
Oh,
anybody
that
who's
is so
interested.
good.
Yeah.
Into the beer world.
Yeah, it definitely helps.
That's good.
Yeah.
Pariah is really new. One of the newer breweries.
We
in
are.
town,
We're
right?
coming up on 8 months on
Mhm.
October 11th. I believe.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate
where
it.
is it exactly?
We are located on 3052 El Cajon Boulevard. We're
Okay.
actually directly across the street from Tiger,
Oh.
and to the building over from Lips.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be a fun night.
Yeah,
Start with the beer
yeah,
and
it's
head
cool.
over to
You can
Lips.
see the crowd from Lips as they get out, and yeah, it's
Or
fun.
vice versa. That is too good. Okay, I'm really curious, Zach, and Ian too. I mean, because you're working with beer and brewers all along. There are so many new brewers, right? Craft breweries in San Diego. Where was everybody drinking before? What I know, and because everybody's full, everyone's busy.
Yeah.
What are you seeing? How's this working?
It's crazy. I think we're at like 150 last time I
That's
read. 150
amazing.
breweries, and that's not
Yeah.
including brew pubs and all the restaurants
Mhm.
and the bars as well. But I think people have their spots, and
Mhm.
we're just trying to be one of those cool spots
Yeah,
and
a
that
cool
serve
spot.
great beer.
Yeah,
So
and neighborhoody maybe. You become that neighborhood. I can walk over, hang
Yeah,
out.
true. Yeah, there's definitely that. I mean, Hamilton's Tavern
Yeah,
is a
sure.
staple bar, and Society and Alesmith
Mhm.
and Stone, all those big guys.
Yeah,
They've been around doing great things. So we're just trying to become that. We're trying to
exactly.
create great beer and hopefully bring in a crowd.
Yeah.
And sustain, of course. Yeah.
Exactly, and make it through. Pariah, the name. So we know what the word kind of
Yeah.
means. So how did that come up?
So historically, the word pariah is the people of the lowest caste system in India. But we don't use it for that. That's just the historical reference. We use it for the modern present tense, which is as an outcaster. So we see ourselves as outcasters in the industry, trying to not follow trends, do our own thing, and still create super highly elevated, creative, and unique beers
And
for the
unique
public.
beers.
They definitely are that.
They definitely are,
Definitely.
Ian, because you're tasting beers all the time because you're trying to come up with pairings and flights and everything to pair with the cheeses.
Pretty much every day.
Yeah. What strikes you most about Pariah?
They use a lot of ingredients. That is
Ah.
definitely for sure.
So that's what makes them really different
and
and
definitely
out.
unique styles. I
Mhm.
mean, San Diego is definitely an IPA town first and foremost. I
Mhm.
think Zach would agree with me there. They
Completely.
make a
Yeah.
couple of phenomenal single IPAs, double IPAs, but they have some really interesting other different types of beers.
Oh, yeah? That's good to hear because a lot of people aren't IPA fans. And,
Totally.
And you're right. They're everywhere.
And our brewmaster, Brian, his wife actually isn't not a great, but really into hobby forward beers.
Uh-huh.
So one of the beers we have is called Erotic City.
Ooh.
It's an ale wine mead hybrid. He uses white muscat grapes from Northern California, orange blossom honey, and grains of paradise, which is white pepper from Africa. So that's a great gateway beer.
Yeah.
Besides like your typical Belgian wit or a Kolsch, maybe that might get someone who's not really into the beer scene into it.
Yeah.
And that one's more of a ale wine mead hybrid. So those wine drinkers, that's a great beer for them. And then for our event that we're doing next Monday, we're actually bringing back our Erotic Night, which is the same version but with red Syrah grapes, a little bit of chocolate malt, lavender, and star anise.
That is just crazy. I never heard the brewers really using all those flavors, so that is kind of more unique.
Yeah, mead's definitely been a thing. It's kind of up and coming. Same with like the sake and all that stuff in the beverage community. So
Yeah.
Brian just took it to the next level. Dogfish Head actually did a beer called Midas Touch, which is take on an ancient style. So it stems from that, but yeah, it's crazy. It's a weird beer. 30% or more of the fermentable sugars come from the grapes and the honey alone. So
That's just wild. I would never have put that into beer.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's
Learn
delicious.
something every
It's
day.
worth a try.
Yeah,
Just gotta
exactly.
try new stuff every day.
Every day. Yeah, you do. And
See
you
if it
do,
works.
Ian, right? This is a tough part of the job, right?
Really, really hard.
Really hard of coming
Yeah.
up with what really goes.
Really tough to
Yeah.
drink beer and eat cheese.
To
all
drink
day.
beer and eat cheese. If you're going to say is there one cheese that you can say that you just love with almost every beer you've tried? You've done so many combos.
It's tough
Could you say?
because I mean, well, first and foremost, every cheese is amazing.
Goes
But
without
there are
saying.
no real hard and fast rules when it comes to beer and cheese
Yeah.
pairing. There's so many cool ways to do different things. It's really subjective to people's tastes. You know, like Zach was saying earlier, not everybody likes IPAs,
Sure.
so then you might not like certain pairings with other things. I really like to pair funk with funk.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, any really kind of interesting sour beer, anything with
Yeah.
Brett added to it, that's Brettanomyces, which really adds sort of like a
Ooh.
barnyardy funk to beers. I think Zach could probably speak on that a little
totally,
bit more.
completely true.
Yeah, because you just stumped me on that word.
It's a wild yeast strain
Okay.
that most lambic brewers use over in Belgium. Pariah right now, actually, Brian is working on his North Park Wild Ale, which is a wild ale yeast strain. It's actually one strain of Brettanomyces, 2 lactobacillus strains that he pulled and cultivated off of a bougainvillea tree in his backyard.
That's
So,
super cool.
Yeah, it's going to be really rad. We've been testing it out. It's still in the fermenter right now. And then we'll be bottling
Yeah.
conditioning it after that.
Talk
It's-
about terroir.
Talk about terroir,
Comes from
right?
his
Literally from
backyard.
the backyard. So we have terroir here in San Diego. Then
Yeah,
this is awesome.
totally, yeah.
You guys sound like mad scientists with all this.
Brian really is a mad scientist. He's really all about doing things his way, out of the box, and not following trends. So he's killing it right now. Yeah,
That is super fun. So that is funky because you're using wild yeasts.
totally.
And the funk on the cheese, what are you thinking? Some of the washed rinds?
We're
the ones
talking
that are
washed rinds.
Yeah. Absolute favorite? Do you think a good one?
Oh,
that
my
you go
absolute
to?
favorite cheese of all time is Epoisse. That's because I studied abroad in Dijon, France when I was in college.
Lucky dog.
And
Yeah.
that's
Lucky
where that
you.
cheese is made.
Yeah.
So
And did you love it back then even? Because it was.
that's really
was it-
where my passion for cheese
yeah,
began.
it came.
Honestly,
Oh, this is
is
awesome.
because that was the first cheese. I mean, a lot of people
Yeah.
think that's not really such an approachable cheese, but I had it and
No.
I was absolutely blown away.
Blown away.
And then here I am.
And here you are. So you would suggest pairing the Epoisse with one of these funky, like this new.
Yeah, and if that's a little
There you
bit,
go.
you know, there are more approachable wash rinds
Mhm.
and other smellier cheeses that you could
Yeah.
definitely get down with.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good starter cheese, Ian. No wonder you're into all the combos. That's not for the faint of heart. In fact, no lie, that is banned from public transportation in Paris
Really?
because it's so stinky.
No
There
way.
is no way to contain it. Okay, Zach,
That's the
I
only
tried
reason
it
it's banned is because it smells so bad?
because it smells so
Highly
bad
offensive.
and yeah, and mildly. I mean, it just reeks.
I know a lot
in
of
good
people then
way.
would be banned from France then. If
Right?
They,
They should ban some people.
yeah, seriously.
Exactly. But really awesome. But yeah, also rumored to have been Napoleon's favorite cheese.
Really?
Yes, apparently. How did he do his hand? Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. So funk with funk is good. For the IPAs though out there, Ian, is there a certain cheese that you think's really cool with the IPAs?
The classic, you know, kind of
Mhm.
standby that people really typically lean towards is cheddars.
Mhm.
Cheddars, but I actually like to do a little more interesting things. Alpine styles,
Ooh.
such as Gruyere and Comté,
Mhm.
those are your standbys, would be my favorite style to pair with. But if you want to get a little bit more interesting, something about super, super tangy and acidic goat cheeses and blue cheeses
Mhm.
Mhm.
also works
also
really well.
work well with that. That's surprising to me.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. What about does Pariah do any like a dark, like a stout, porter, one of those dark?
We do. We have 3 stouts on, or
Mm-hmm.
3 stouts on right now. Our flagship stout is our Dorch Extra Stout. It's a foreign extra stout with proprietary blend of coffee from Bird Rock Coffee
Sounds
Roasters in
yummy.
La Jolla,
Mm-hmm.
cocoa nibs from Ecuador, and molasses. We have our Chin Out, which is American stout brewed with Chinook hops it's actually a homebrew recipe from Brian Beagle, who does the SD Beer Talk podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's his recipe that we brewed on our system. He's an awesome guy. And then one of our crazier beers is actually our Uni Stout. So it's a
Like uni is the sushi uni.
correct. It's a oyster stout base style. Most oyster stouts just use salt water, but Brian took it to the next level. Brian Mitchell is our owner and brewmaster, by the way.
Okay.
So he took it to the next level, used real San Diego sea urchin. He noted that San Diego is one of the largest producers of sea urchin in the world, so might as well utilize it. A
Why
little
not
bit of
put it?
lactose sugar and sea salt.
I just picture a vat and you're pouring these things in. I just can't even see how this.
Yeah,
can
I think
be.
he
Is
adds it
this-
right into the boil kettle. I'm
Yeah,
positive. Yeah,
that is just completely wild to
it's
me.
it's crazy. Most people, when they read that beer, they're totally against it because they feel like
Yeah.
it's just gonna be a little sushi roll in their mouth, but it's not at all. It's crazy well balanced, and I always highly recommend people trying that beer.
This we gotta try. Have you tried that, Ian?
I haven't yet.
I'm
No,
sorry I didn't
we
bring
gotta-
beer. I
No,
should have brought some.
we're gonna
My
have you
apologies.
back. We're gonna-
Please have me
with
back,
lots
and
of
I
beer.
will bring back every crazy weird beer
Every
you want.
crazy weird, because I
Yeah.
didn't realize how crazy weird it is, and I'm trying to think now what will go with this uni style. What about a flip? What about a chef? Like a
You need something with some big umami flavor, I feel.
Mhm.
Totally, I would agree with that.
yeah.
It has a lot of chocolate notes. There's a little bit of caramel malt in there as well, and
Uh-huh.
the sea salt just adds that little sweetness, salty
Yeah.
characteristic.
That is crazy.
About a camembert.
Maybe because it's
Mhm.
kind of mushroomy but yet creamy.
Very
You get
unctuous.
that'd be one to test. We'll have to do a pairing test like that. All right, sounds really good. Styles. You've tried them all. How many do you have at Pariah? I mean,
Right
it sounds
now-
like so many.
Different styles.
Styles,
or number
yeah, like, How many do
we
you
have
sell at one time?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 7 different styles,
Yeah.
I believe. And right now we have about 12 to 13 beers on at all times. We have
Mhm.
13 faucets, so that's normally where
Okay,
we're about.
so
We've
you're
got-
going to keep 13 ones, and then they'll change out seasonally.
Yeah, we change them
or
out all the
whatever.
time.
Yeah.
Right now, Brian is working on a Belgian blonde with pears and hazelnuts.
Wow. That sounds holiday, like fallish.
Yeah, Brian has
Mhm.
this really cool yeast strain he brought over from Belgium, and he cultivated it over at White Labs. It's our Sinner Ale yeast strain, and it's really cool and crazy. It's creates this dryness in the beer, but also these really cool grassy and vanilla notes in it.
Mhm.
So that will be used. We previously used it in a beer called Mare of the Monk. If anybody liked that, it'll be the
Yeah.
same yeast strain, and then with the new, it's gonna be a Belgian blonde
Yeah.
with pears and hazelnuts.
That is just so wild. What about the beer purists? I know there are cheese purists, right, Ian? Like, that
Probably such
want
as
the
myself.
traditional, like yourself. You don't want any flavors inside. You don't want anything coated on the outside.
True.
In the beer world, do you encounter that too?
Yeah, totally, and that's totally cool. That's just how your palate is.
Sure.
Everybody's palate's different. My palate's different from Ian's. Ian's palate's
Yeah.
different than mine. For me personally, I have studied the classic styles so much. That's why I enjoy working at Pariah, because I get to try these crazy new inventions,
Yeah.
brands. But at the same time, there's plenty of breweries you can go to try significant styles that are classic. North Park Beer Company is an excellent producer of classic styles. Epic right now, our neighbors next door,
Yeah.
I'll give them a shout out. They're doing a great lager series.
Oh, nice.
Their Schwartz beer is my favorite over there, so they're awesome. So yeah, there's a ton of breweries you can go to that are doing classic styles. So
That's so cool.
yeah,
And at Bottlecraft, Ian, you're lucky because you can taste all these different styles because there's so many to choose from, right?
There are,
You're
yeah.
experimenting
and
all
within,
the time,
And within
yeah.
each style, there's a significant variety, just like they
Yeah.
have over at their place. I mean, there's thousands of beers over there that we kind of open something up every
Right.
day and then just try a bunch of stuff with it and see what works best.
Exactly.
and that's another thing with Ian working at Bottlecraft, and same with Bind and Vine over on Adams Avenue. They have all those bottles that they ship over from Europe. So
Yeah.
if you do want to try the classic styles, and you don't want to go to a brewery necessarily, just go to one of those bottle shops, get some bottles, and
Yeah.
go home and try them out.
And how fun, right?
Yeah.
And you can kind of do side by side.
Do a little
and
study.
I'm getting thirsty, and I'm getting definitely hungry. Definitely. You mentioned using grapes or a little almost wine with the beer. You're kind of combining the two.
They're great pressings.
Yeah, great pressing. So that's just going to give you some sugar, some sweetness.
It adds fermentable
Yeah.
sugars and definitely the sweet characteristic as well.
Yeah.
Same thing with the wine. A little acidity, I believe, as well will come
Right.
from the grapes.
Will come from the grapes and add to that. Because there's the debate, wine and cheese versus beer and cheese.
Totally.
Yeah,
I
and
think we would argue for the latter.
you're going to argue for the latter. And so, and why? What really sticks that makes it beer and cheese just...
Well, there's something just so special about beer in that there are all these classic varieties that you can do,
Yeah.
but then there's so much variety within the styles, as I mentioned before.
Mhm.
Unlike in wine, I'm not saying that there's a Chardonnay and a Gewürztraminer are going to be exactly the same thing, because they're obviously
Sure.
not. There's the issue of terroir and
Mhm.
varietals of grapes, but you can do so many cool things with beer, like you're doing. You're adding all these adjuncts, which adds such a complexity, and you do the same thing with cheese.
Yeah.
People add all different types of fruits and leaves and all different types of things
Mhm.
into cheese, and you can kind of have some fun pairings with that, which is exactly what we're going to be doing on Monday.
Yeah, Monday, you're doing it's called the 5x5 pairing. How'd this come about?
Well, I actually was in the San Diego Craft Beer Program at SDSU. I highly recommend it to anybody who's
Oh,
interested
nice.
in doing that. And Robert Graff of Venissimo came in, and we did a little tasting. And so from that, when I worked at Pariah, I was like, I've always wanted to work with Venissimo on a cheese pairing because, like we were talking earlier, beer just goes really well with cheese.
Yeah.
Any som can argue with me that wine goes better, but I will argue against that.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be great.
so-
We got to get a song
yeah,
with you in here.
Yeah, totally. I contacted these guys, and they're all about it, and they've done it multiple times. So they're really experienced at it, and
Yeah.
then it's gonna be a great night. We're just gonna sit, talk about the cheese and beer for a little bit. Ian's super knowledgeable, so he'll
Yeah.
inform you all about the cheese and the beer pairings, and
And why
we're just
they're
gonna
so
hang out,
great.
and,
Yeah.
and it'll be a good time.
I don't want to give too much away as far as what kinds of
Yes.
pairings we're going to be doing, but
Yeah.
it's going to be wild.
It's going to be wild.
It's gonna be
We're going to get
wild.
some of the funk with funk, I'm assuming.
Totally, we
for
were trying them
sure.
out last night, and every
Yeah.
time it just got better and better and better with each pairing we were
This
tasting.
is
out.
so good.
Yeah.
And there are definite crossovers
Yeah.
between what they use in their beer and what cheeses we're going to be using for the
Yeah.
tasting.
Oh,
so
nice. So kind of compare and contrast.
Totally.
Something like
that's
that.
the
Totally.
idea.
Oh, that is super, super good. Back to the beer, better than wine. Do you think bubbles play into it at all? Like the fact that it's carbonated.
Absolutely.
Like,
Completely.
I think that
Cheese-
is one thing that I really, really love
Carbonation
about
is
that.
necessary when eating food.
Mhm. Carbonation. It's
And,
good. Scrubby bubbles.
Totally,
what
and
we
it
call it.
scrubs everything off your palate, and that's why the super highly carbonated beers, like all the Weiss beers from Germany,
Yeah.
are excellent with food.
Hmm.
It's because they do cleanse your palate every time.
Is that why they can drink, this big a liter? at
Totally,
a
and that's
time?
why you get a nice like 3-inch head on the top, because it's
Yeah.
just so well carbonated, and there's a technique to pouring it even because it's so well carbonated. But yeah,
And that adds a point. I love champagne or
Mm-hmm.
bubbles, and because I think the cream it goes with the cream in the cheese,
exactly.
and so then they go together.
Yeah, it just
this
cuts right
works.
through all the